Welcome everybody to the first webinar. This webinar is about building a game in Karel. There's many values to game-based learning. Some of you have heard this speech before in our live trainings, and I'm going to keep that part of it nice and short and sweet, but certainly you might have questions come to you as to why you're doing this. Well, we're using game building to develop logic and storytelling and design skills. I'm Sheila, and you can reach me anytime at sheila@nclab.com. I'm the Director of Education for NCLab, so I put together training programs and supporting materials and so forth. Dr. Pavel Solin is the one who creates the actual courses, and then we have all kinds of people working behind the scenes to make this happen. We're very lucky to get funding for this from the Nevada State Library. It's through a grant, and it's funded by the Institute for Museum and Library Services through the Library Services and Technology Act. For those of you who don't know NCLab, we are a company that produces a self-contained desktop platform. And on this platform, you can learn and use computer programming, modeling, and many other STEM skills. And you'll see more and more apps and courses come alive on this desktop. So stay tuned for that. The courses themselves are self-paced and self-graded. The expertise is built in, and people can take the courses on their own on any device. Once you've learned these skills, though, you want to be able to apply them, and you apply them using the Apps in Creative Suite. So if you have your desktop, feel free to follow along, and if not, you can just follow what I'm doing here, but it does help to try these things yourself. I'm going to switch over to the desktop for a moment. This is what it looks like. And as librarians, you will also have this My Students panel. It allows you to monitor the progress of people. You do have a place to keep your own files, and you can have people share files with you and store them there as well. There are the courses, and then what we're focusing on today is Creative Suite. We will be building games in Karel, which is one of the programming apps, and there it is. So I've got that opened up. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And go over what we're going to learn today. So we're going to look a little bit at the purpose of games. We're going to navigate the components of the app so you know what to do where. We'll design a maze and then go on to designing a game. And this is very much Game Building 101. There's a lot more to it, and we'll do a follow-up webinar with the more advanced features. We will go over saving, sharing, and publishing files, and then a little bit on how collaboration and differentiation works within a group. And then finally, we'll wrap it up, and I do have one suggestion for a camp, but of course you can build camps however you prefer yourself. Okay, so one thing to note about games is there are literally games that are called serious games, capital S, capital G. And a serious game is used for training. So for instance, pilots learning how to fly a commercial jet airplane will train for many hours in a simulator before they're even allowed to touch an aircraft. And you can do virtual simulations with the game on a computer as well. Another example, a lot of surgeons are now practicing surgical techniques for a specific patient virtually before they go into the operating room. So those are, of course, very serious because they're in professions where they hold people's lives in their hands. But really, you're going to see this more and more as a training mechanism. Games are also entertaining, and they allow the user to play and learn in a safe environment. And it's not just keeping them safe physically, but it's mental safety. So it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. Certainly if Karel runs into a wall and explodes, he's not really exploding in real life. So it's a way that you can try something over and over again without worrying about failure. And as we know, children in particular, they naturally use play to explore and experiment, and we really want to encourage that in older people as well. Sometimes we're overly trained to be passive learners. Game learning allows us to explore things where we're navigating our own learning. So Karel in particular, we're connecting logical reasoning and programming skills with the design process. The design process is really significant in engineering. If you work at all with teachers who are using the next generation science standards, there's a whole section on engineering design, and so this is a way to practice the design process. You're also practicing language and communication. You have instructions for your game, you have stories for your game, you're going to be collaborating with other people, giving them feedback, so there's lots of language involved. And then lastly, this is a visual art. Creating a maze that's pleasing is actually quite an art, and you can also import artwork into the game, so to complete the story or to demonstrate something. And the app that you're going to be using, this is exactly the same app with a few more features that we use to create the courses. So before you actually do the puzzle of the game, there's usually instructional screens, and it might be a tutorial or just an introduction. You may have a link to a video, and you can do this as well in your own games. And you may also have a story that goes along with it. I think this is going to be really fun for kids to do. They love storytelling, and I noticed when we were training in librarians in Carson City, they were having fun with that part too. So you can flex your storytelling muscles in both text and in pictures. The puzzle itself is going to test coding skills, and these are done to certain criteria. And then after it's finished, you get data back. So this is one thing that's really good about the course itself. You will know exactly what you did, how many lines of code it took, whether you used a template, how many operations were done, and so forth. It gives you data back, and it'll do the same thing in the app. So let's go back to our Karel app. And if you don't know how to get there, again, this is you open Creative Suites, then Programming, then Karel the Robot, and it'll come up with a sample program that looks like this. Two buttons to be aware of. The button on the left is the Run button. It'll run the code all at once. If you're troubleshooting a game or you want to see exactly how each command line works, you use the Step button. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at that in the app itself. So there's the same maze. Oops, I'm just going to scoot it over there a bit, and I'm going to enlarge the print so you can see the code. Okay, so I'm going to start stepping Karel through the maze, and you'll see what he does. So the first command says while he's not at home, and the green button is the home button. And down here in the lower left, it'll also tell you what's going on. Yes, that condition was satisfied, so now we can go to the next command line. What's he going to do? He's going to make one step forward, and he does. And then he's going to check. He's going to see if there's a key, he's going to get it. But you'll notice down here it says that the condition is not satisfied. So he's just going to keep going. He didn't get to see a key, didn't run into any walls. He's just going to go back and forth and go, 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 until, oh, guess what? We're going to see the wall now. There's the wall. And what is he going to do? He's going to turn right. There he goes. If there's another wall, nope, we don't have to do that part. There's no other wall. He's going to keep going. And then now we are on top of a key. So now the condition is satisfied for if key, and he's going to get that. Voila. And I'm just going to run through the rest of the program. And you can see how fast it can go. And he's finished when he gets home. So this is a game that requires writing a program in order to run. But when you're first learning how to do this, it's good to start in manual mode. It requires no coding, but it does help with learning how to build a good maze and trying out your maze and your objects and everything else. So I'm going to restart that, and this time you can see over in manual mode, all I have are my controls. So I would just move Karel forward and turn right and forward, and then when I see the key, I'm going to get it and keep going and turn right and go and get and left and so forth. And up, I turned the wrong way and I crashed. So then I'd have to do it again. So those are those two modes, programming and, oops, wrong button, sorry. Programming and manual mode. And there are only 5 basic commands: go, left, right, get, and put. Get picks up an object, and put puts it into a container. That sounds very simplistic, but you start looking at real world robots, and 90% of what they do is go, left, right, get, and put, or go, turn, in some manner, get, and put, whether they're building a circuit board or working in a warehouse or whatever the case may be. So these aren't trivial commands. They really underlie robotics. So this is where the fun begins. We're going to go to designer mode, and this is the third option on the top menu. And I'm going to run a little video that explains the menu bar. So let's go to that now. Welcome to the Karel app. This is a quick tour of the menu buttons in designer mode. You're going to use this to create your mazes. Our first button on the left is the themes button, and that allows you to create different themes. In this case, we picked one called Mexico, and I picked Mexico 2. The second button creates obstacles to form the maze, and you'll notice that the top segment are all walls. Wall is a keyword in Karel, so I can press any of these buttons and start populating the maze. I might continue the wall with a cornfield, so there's some corn going up this way, and so forth. I can also create standalone obstacles. So I might have a cactus plant here. And Karel, if he runs into those, will crash. Our next button is our objects button. And there are plenty of choices here. It's a long list. All of these are keywords that can be used in your program. So I'm going to select object corn and start putting it over here in our corn maze. There's one, there's another one. And I can also make multiple copies of this in one square. So this square now has 3 corns in it. Containers is our next button. The same thing, I can have a capacity of 1, or I can hold multiple objects. So there's my basket I'm going to use to harvest the corn, and it holds 2 corns. If I click on it again, it'll double whatever number I've assigned to it. The next button removes objects, so I'm going to get rid of 1 corn here. And that's all there is to it. The button after that will actually clear the whole maze. It looks like a little eraser, and you do get a warning message. So voila, everything is gone. With this button, I can place elements randomly. So I've got it depressed, and I'll select corn. And you can see I'm just clicking on the corn button, and it is being placed in the maze. I might decide that I want to undo the last few corns, and this is the green arrow here, undo. I can just back those out. I went too far, so I can hit redo and put some of them back in. What about Karel himself? Well, we can turn him left, we can turn him right, and we can move him into place. So you can move him here, for instance, and you can also move your home square. In fact, I can move any of my objects at any time. This corn doesn't make any sense up on that building. I'm going to drag it down here, and that's fine. At any point, you can save your maze. I've already saved this. It's a file called Sample Karel. So when I click this flashing save button, it'll just do that. It'll update the file. If you want to save it as another name, you can do Save As from the File menu. It'll pull it up, and I might want to call this Sample Karel 2. Press OK. And now I'm working on Sample Karel 2. That's it for this video. We'll explore some more advanced features in another video. Have fun playing with the buttons and create a few mazes for yourself. That was a little idea on how the designer menu works. And when you're designing, you're going to find that at the beginning it is chaotic, and especially kids will just fill their screens full of objects. And that's okay. You want to start by messing around, and then you can hone your skills by focusing on an attribute. For instance, you might look at the aesthetics. You might start really, really simple and see and build complexity slowly. You may want to demonstrate a skill, for instance, developing a repeat loop. You may have a theme. There are objects that are thematically connected. The theme I picked was Mexico, so I had my adobe buildings and cornfields and so forth. But you could say have a Halloween theme. There's all kinds of things you can do. You could use it as a simulation, and I'll talk more about that later. If you have the desktop, what I'd like you to do for the next 5 minutes is just play around with that app. If you don't, you can follow me on the other screen, but we can meet back here. It's 2:22. And why don't we get back to the slideshow at 2:27? And like I said, if you're not on a desktop, just follow what I'm doing. But if you are, please play with it and see how this works for yourself. So for those of you who are still with me, I'm going to go to Designer. And one exercise you can do right off the bat is just have them rearrange blocks and make a different maze out of the existing maze. This is a bit messy. You can delete pieces too. So I can click my X and just remove certain pieces. So this is one way for them to get accustomed to working with maze building. They could use the same program and just try modifying the maze a little bit. What's more fun, of course, is just to start from scratch. So I'm going to clear everything and pick a theme. That's the button on the left. And, ooh, storm. That sounds exciting. Okay, so I have some options. These are simply backdrops. Maybe I'll pick that one. Looks like there's a big mess of things flying around. We had a storm like that the other day, so I'm going to go for storm. And go back to my top menu. And now I'm going to put some walls in. So there's a lot of choices for walls. I'm going to try this one. So I can build it. I can also, as we mentioned earlier, populate it at random. Place that and go back to our wall. No, maybe not for wall. Oh yeah, they're there. So I've got some walls occurring randomly, and then I might go back in and join them up and select that. Or you might actually, oh, these look like bones. I think they are. You don't necessarily have to connect up all the wall pieces to make a maze. It can be fun to leave parts open. Really what you're trying to do with the robot is navigate around them. So our theme, I think, oh, and you can also drag them. So you can see that I can just drag them along and make a wall like that. And I am going to unselect my wall. Move my home square over here, and Karel, I'm going to have him start down here and turn him so he's facing towards the maze. And then I'm going to put some obstacles in. So let's see, it's a storm, and we have some ice. Oh, maybe he's got to pick up some fuel for his plane. So we can put a couple of jerry cans there, maybe some oxygen. A compass. Oh, compass doesn't like me today. And again, I can put more than one object in a square by selecting this. So if I decide, I've got 3 oxygen tanks there. And then if I want to put things in a container, maybe I am going to collect these all into my bag. So I'll put a bag here, and it might be that all I want to put in the bag are the oxygen bottles. So I'll select that. And the bag has a capacity of 5. So if I collect all my, oops, let's make another one over there. Okay, and I can erase that one. Okay, so I've made myself a simple little maze, and I'm going to save it, and I'll call it Karel Disaster. Disaster prep. He's getting ready to deal with the disaster. So I now have a maze that I've saved. We do have these projects where you can use a project to get that structure in the learning once they've played around a bit, and we'll make those available to you in the community. There are 25 projects in all, and they start very simple with maze building and then get more into the aspects of game building and also some skills tied to the course instruction. Once you've made a maze, then you can design a game around it. And what you'll do is click over on the games button and convert it to a game. So I'm going to do that right now. I've already saved my maze. I'm going to click on games and click that. And it says, are you sure you want to convert it to a game? And I say yes. Now, the nice thing about having saved this maze is I may be able to use it for more than one game. I can just open the file and create a new game. So this screen looks quite different. I'll go through the functions on that screen. You now have a new bar. It's a new menu bar at the top. And this is where you can edit the game, and then you can test it by playing it. The edit page has a lot of features, and we're only going to look at 2 for now. That's the pages and the goals tabs. This is where you can type in your story. So I'm going to do that here with this one. Go edit game, and I can say, you can make a title, and one of the fun parts about doing this with the group is you can have them storyboard a bunch of games, and each one of them create part of that story. So this might be way down the road where he's helping some survivors, and you can write a little story in here. It could be just simply instructions: get the oxygen tanks. Stat. Okay, so once you've written the story and you've got plenty of room to write things and add pictures and so forth, you can just save that. And now it's showing up on my main screen. Oh no, get ready to help the survivors. This is the part where you're really making the game elements, is on this goals tab. I strongly suggest when you start this with kids is you just do it in manual mode. Don't try and make a programming game just yet. Just something that they can solve by going through the maze and doing things with the objects. Within this, in these blue boxes, you can set limits. You can set limits as to how many steps they can take, how many operations they can do, any particular objects they need to collect, or if they need to collect all the objects. You can check that they need to fill all the containers. You can check whether they're going to finish on the home square. And you can even write your own custom victory message in there. There's much more to it than that, but that's really enough to get started. And of course, once you finish putting in your attributes, you press the save button. So we can do that here. Go to edit and over to goals. And I can say he's going to fill all the containers. It's manual mode. I'm not going to worry about steps right now. It's usually better to come back to that, but maybe I'm going to tell him that he's going to collect 5 objects. And we'll do a victory message and say, thank you for saving the day, and save that. And when we go to play this game, so if I play it, it knows I'm going to go to manual mode. Then I can just start playing it and testing it out and seeing, well, the oxygen tanks are way over there, my container's there. So this is a little bit of trial and error to get a good game going. And of course, you can put obstacles as well so that he has to avoid the obstacles. This is designing a game is like any other writing piece or piece of artwork. You're going to go back, you're going to play it, you'll revise your instructions and repeat until you've got a game that you think is enjoyable to play. So this is my corn maze example, and those are my conditions. I limited the number of steps to 54 through trial and error. I found out you could solve it in about 56 steps or so. I didn't quite make the limit that tight because that can be frustrated. And in this case, he's going to put all the corn into his containers here. So I said, fill all containers. And he has to get back into the village afterwards. He's going to finish at home. I did set it to manual mode. And after he's finished, that was my victory message for this example. He saved the day, and it gives me my information on what I accomplished. Once you have a game, you want to share and publish it. And of course, you do have to save it first. So let's go back to, we're just going to close that. We can save it. So save as, and we've got file disaster prep. That's good. We're all set. And then we can share it. You go right down to this button that says publish to the web. Now, publish to the web, it doesn't have to be really public. All it's doing is creating a URL, a link. And I'm going to click it so that, for instance, anybody could just see it, or anyone can see it and play the game. And then if you're working collaboratively with someone else, you can put in an edit privilege. So if I click that, now I have a link that I can copy. I can copy that anywhere. I can click it there, and for instance, I could open up a Google Doc, blank, and I could just put my name. This is Sheila's game, and my URL there. And now anyone can open up that game. So if I follow that link, it'll take me to the game. And there it is. This is a way that they can share the game with each other and play it, and that's really where the fun is in sharing. You can also post it to social media if that's what they like to do, and it's a great way to show the parents what they've been doing. Okay, so how can we turn this into a group activity? Well, there's a number of ways. I mentioned this one earlier. You can develop a storyboard, and this is where it's nice maybe to have a chart holder with a chart on it and a bunch of squares, and they can write out the story they're going to tell through the game building and then assign themselves individual games. They could even level it so that you start with a really super easy game as level 1 and work up to something harder that involves programming. Kids are familiar with that. If they've played any video games, they all operate pretty much along those lines. You can assign them roles. This is very commonly done with cooperative learning. Each person has a role to play. So someone who's artistic might check everybody's work for the appearance. You might have someone who's a good writer that can help as an editor with people's writing. You may have one kid who's just the coder in the group, and they can help troubleshoot the code that's being used to run the program. And you can have someone who just tests everything. There maybe does the final seal of approval that this game is ready to go. So you can do that for a group. You can also build client-designer relationships. Each pair of students, one is the client, the other is the designer, and vice versa. They're designing for each other. Maybe they want to show a task with Karel and you ask them questions. Well, what do you think should be in that? What's your purpose? And so forth. And then you go design a game for them and they do the same for you. This is great life skill practice. One form of role playing that's very helpful for kids who may be struggling a little bit with the skills is to assign a pilot and a navigator role. So in that case, they're working on the same desktop, but one does all the keying, the typing, and so forth, and the other person is reading out instructions. That sort of splits some of the language tasks up. It's tremendous what a team of 2 can do as opposed to just one person. If you find them getting stuck, you might pair them up as pilots and navigators, and they can switch roles too. Degree of difficulty, like I said, you want to start them in manual mode. You can make some really amazing games in manual mode. It doesn't necessarily mean easy, but it does help them build a game without having to write actual code. Once they learn some code in the courses, then they can design games around the code. And that's where you can tie it to your course skills. Long term, you may have someone who is preparing for a coding contest. There are coding Olympiads. There are global contests in coding, or they may be developing a portfolio piece. You can even create an artifact for the Advanced Placement Computer Science Principles course. This may be where you collaborate with a high school. They can use Karel to create an artifact. You can use any form of programming to do that. Finally, you can publish these games on our website. You can submit them for approval. They can be shared among libraries. So all of these raise the bar a little bit and help them refine a game for a wider audience. Okay, so how would this look as a camp or a club? This is one example. And when I do a camp, I like to get them off the computer as well. In your first session, of course, you're just bringing everybody in, and sometimes it takes a little work to get them started. You can do an exploration of the Karel app itself, just play with it, and then open up a level or 2 on the course so they're familiar with how to get through the course. Usually what I do for the next session is just a work session. Dig in, learn some skills. It's difficult to create a game if you have no skills to base it on. I like to go back and forth between that seat time that's very intensive. Karel's hard on the brain. You're doing a lot of thinking. and a lot of sitting. So it's good to get up and move around. One activity I suggest is acting out algorithms. And algorithms is all that means is a set of instructions on how to do something. It doesn't necessarily mean computer coding. For example, and I tried this once, feeding my dogs. I was amazed how many steps it took to feed the dogs in terms of go, left, right, get, and put. So you can have them walking around the library and doing things and thinking, well, how many goes is that? How many lefts? How many rights? Are there patterns I could repeat? Acting it out makes it real. But then there's another work session on Unit 1. And then another way to pull them away from the computer is have them sit around at tables and play board games. And this could be chess, it could be Go, it could be Mastermind. There are lots and lots of games that just develop their understanding of how games work. They develop reasoning skills and they develop communication skills. Plus, they're fun. Then at that point, they're going to get back and hopefully finish Unit 1. Unit 1 isn't that difficult to finish. Or they could try some of the projects to get those skills refined somewhat. And then you can start actually having a more serious attempt at building a game with the Karel app. And finally finish it and share it out so people can try each other's games. That's broken down into about 8 to 10 hours of sessions, and it could be, say, club meetings, or it could be a camp that you set up over 2 or 3 days or mornings during spring break, for instance, or in the summer. And certainly you can marry this with other activities in the library. That's basically what I've talked your ears off for 45 minutes. We talked a little bit about the purpose of games, how to find how to get around the app, the components. So that's the programming mode, the manual mode, the designer mode, and then the game creation mode. We worked through designing a maze, a little bit about how to build the game itself, how to share the files, some ideas on how you can work with groups of people, kids, adults, whatever. They're not much different. Kids learn a little faster, but they're a little less quiet than adults, as you well know, and some ideas for how to do a club or a camp. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to you guys, and I can unmute everybody as well. So feel free to speak, or if you want to type something in the box, you can do that as well.
Kids, how will they access it?
How do the kids access it? That's a good question. The way the libraries have worked is we've set up accounts, and just email me. I'll walk you through on how to set it up. But you'll have, you can create a particular group. You can see on my screen, I'm acting like a teacher here. I'm teaching 6 periods of computer programming and modeling and such. I have a club called Code Wizards After School, and I have a teacher training. And I can populate each group. You'll have, for the libraries, what you're using are anonymous usernames and passwords. They're not tied to emails. What we are asking for you to do as instructors is we do want you to enroll yourself via email because it's better for communication, and we're going to be getting rid of anonymous usernames for instructors. But for the end users, this is the best way to go. So you can simply assign, say, test SEB 133, and you can assign it to a person. If they ever forget their password, it's really easy. You can reset it with the button down here, and they're ready to go. So they can try one of the courses, and they will have automatic access to the apps as well. So hopefully that helps. You do that, by the way, sorry. It used to be we did that for you. You can do that all by yourself now with that little unlock at the top of the screen. And for you, you would generate new student accounts. So let's say I wanted to add a few more seats to my Code Wizards After School. So I have selected Code Wizards After School. And then no, I don't want 104 people in that group. I only want to add 4. And this is a problem we used to have. Man, you started generating your manual accounts and all of a sudden you had 500 of these things. You can just add 4 and you can choose to assign them random passwords. You could give them all the same password and have them change it when they log in. And you have control over that anyway. If they ever lose their password, you can reset it for them. So now I've got 4 users and they all have A, B, C, D, E, F as a password. And there they are. So I've added these students now to my Code Wizards after school, and I can export this as a spreadsheet, which I highly recommend you do. Just save it, and then it's there. It's easy to get at. So yes, now I go back and you can see automatically now I have 9 instead of 5 in my Code Wizards. It's nice. It's nice to have that control. Okay, so great. So I'm seeing from White Pine that you're doing half an hour of coding and then half an hour of programming, designing games. So it's good to go back and forth, isn't it? You want to get the input side where they're learning something, but it doesn't make any sense until they try it themselves. I'm glad that's working out for you. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to make sure. No, I got my chat window open. Okay. And thanks, Tony. Yes, hands-on is very important. I would never force a kid to sit at a computer for hours on end. I think that's just cruel and unusual punishment. We do it for a living, and it's really, your body does not thank you for it. By the way, there's the spreadsheet that generated from that, so you can save it or print out a record of that. I'm just going to go ahead and close it. Okay, I do want to show you one thing. Oh, Sparks, yay, all right. Yes, design, and our next, actually, this is what I wanted to show you. Our next webinar is going to be on building a drone, so that should be fun. I do want to show you some of the ideas that we have for camps. I'm just going to pull that up out of my menu. And NCLab camps. Of course, there we go, webinars. Is this the one? Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so the first 2 webinars are set. Today was building a game in Karel. Next time we're going to go through the Let's Build a Drone. That's an hour of code activity, but there's lots that can go along with it. Our third webinar, and just give me some feedback on this to see if this is going to be helpful or not. What we want to do is make sure you're really comfortable with managing all those accounts. There's quite a bit to it, and we could have a practice session just on that. All the parts of that My Students panel. The fourth one is, I mentioned something about this client designer relationship. And so there's some really fun activities you can do along those lines, and you can use the modeling course for those as well. A mixture of hands-on at a table activities and on the screen activities. We are producing a job skills map, and we could introduce it in session 3 or in session 4. They're both related to that. The 5th webinar, we could work on designing mosaics with the Python app, and these can be printed as artwork or as stencils or 3D pendants, and I'm thinking Mother's Day, that would be in April. And then the next webinar is on doing a gameathon, time competitions with Karel games, and some of the more advanced game building features, building advanced games. The 7th one would be practicing using the online community and using the support functions. Then the 8th one is on building and printing 3D models effectively, and there's quite a lot to the printing part of it. Some of you have done this and some of you haven't. Then the last one is building puzzles that can be printed out on a 3D printer. So these could either be what we call extrudable 2-dimension puzzles. You just simply add a thickness to the material, or true 3D puzzles. So these are some of the ideas that we have in mind, but we would just love to hear from you. If there's something else you'd rather have, or whatever you choose, we can build that in to the webinar schedule. So any thoughts on that? Okay. All right, thanks. And certainly shoot me an email if you have a burning desire for something. But this will really, I tried to pick a range of topics that were partly management and partly the apps and partly the courses, so that you feel comfortable with using NCLab in your library. All right, well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and yes, I believe Norma sends out the schedule to you. It doesn't come from me directly. Is that correct, Norma? I think you're doing that part. Yes, she says yes. And they're every 2 weeks. If you look at the time here, so normally they're going to be on Tuesdays. Today was Wednesday because of the holiday on Monday. And same thing, in May, we moved that one to Wednesday as well because of Memorial Day. So generally speaking, they're all going to be Tuesdays, every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. and with the exception of the holidays, so that's not too difficult to remember. So our next one's going to be on March 6th, and that'll be the drone workshop. Okay, I do want to show you the community link real quick. And it's this one here. It's just simply community@nclab.com. Okay. And we're really hoping to develop this. This is a place where you can ask questions. You can upload projects and so forth. So it may ask you to log in if you're logged off, but apart from that, it's all yours. And I'll put the projects that I talked about in the community so they're easy for you to access. Eventually they'll be back on the desktop, but right now they're PDFs, so I'll put them here so that you can get them. I think that's it. You can always hit the yellow button on your desktop, which is down here in the bottom, for support. And we do have a new phone number. We don't have the 800 number anymore. It's 300-7667, and that'll be on our website, so you don't have to write that down. It'll be right there. Don't forget, there is a link here that will take you to lesson plans and videos and such, and it's just nclab.com instructor-resources. Again, you may be asked for your ID to verify that you're an instructor. We'll finish recording this, and it's going to be posted as a video, and you can scroll to any part if you want to review it. That's it from me, and I'm so glad you all could join us today. Okay, and thanks to everyone. You guys are the ones that make this happen. Okay, well, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you next time.